Okay, so thanks for James for having us here. I know we sat in the audience last year and we thought, okay, well let's go ahead and give this a go. We'll see what happens. And we pitched this to James, and I remember he came back to us with an email and said, so yeah, from 2 to 2 billion, how to design. But what are you actually talking about?
He also said it sounded very IBM-y. So.
Yeah. So before we get onto that, let's introduce ourselves. My name's Sam Winslet. I'm a visual designer at IBM, and I oversee the IoT division's software visual design.
I'm Sophie, a user experience designer working on the IoT platform for IBM, so making sure that all the products are user-centered, thinking about the user at everything we do.
Excellent. So when we talked about that 2 to 2 billion, the real problem we're getting at is how do you design for something if you don't know what it is or how many of it there are likely to be? And we had a long, hard think about this.
A really long, hard think about it.
And it turns out that, to be honest, well, you can't. So we started going, okay, well, let's think about something else that we might find interesting here. Perhaps some of the time that we at IBM have spent developing and bringing our offering to market could be reused in something a little bit more interesting. So we've come up with the 7 deadly sins for design for IoT. Excellent. So let's crack on.
So the first sin that we want to focus on is greed. And this is all about the developers kind of developing things for themselves. And the sin is you do not want to design for yourself and you do not want to design for your developers. So we've got a big difference here at IBM. We've got people like Andy Stamford-Clark, Dave Conway-Jones, who do a lot of IoT development in their spare time, as well as doing it as part of their job. So it's really, really important that as much as they're amazing and they have great ideas, we can't just use these people and design for them because we're IBM and we're obviously designing for scale, enterprise, not specific developer users. So you would usually find that people like Dave, I've been to Dave's desk many times and he's got these millions of devices just sat around his desk, scrawled, and you go and you chat to him and you're like, wow, all of these devices just there. And so designing a platform for someone who's doing, he might have 20 of these on his desk, but there's only 20 on his desk. And designing something for someone like that is very different than designing for someone who wants to connect up a city like this. There's a huge difference there. So we have to think about the whole spectrum. So one of the sins there is focusing on the people who you need to focus on. And a solution that we have for that is actually designing for the actual users, thinking about the whole ecosystem of who's going to be using the platform for IoT. This mouse is very temperamental. Sorry. So what we've come up with, one of our design researchers actually on our team came up with this whole ecosystem map of some of the users who are going to be involved in the IoT platform. Feel free to look at this very briefly. If you disagree with any of it or you are any of these people, please come and speak to me because I would love to hear what your opinions are about it. And you can see we've got different stages here as well. We've got discover, try, buy, get started, and then move across. And you've got the same people that are valid at different stages of the process as well. And in IBM design speak, that's what we call the 6 universal experiences. So these things we try and make sure that we have good experiences in all 6 of these sections when we're designing here.
Great. So sin 2 is what we've titled envy, or in other words, being a copycat. We often find within large companies that our sales teams drive the direction of the product. And this is about trying to rein that in slightly. Don't just go ahead and copy what everyone else is doing. Take a step back, try and be a little bit more innovative. And that's something that we struggle with because of the speed at which the industry is moving. It's hard to take a step back. Suddenly you're out of the loop on things. You don't know what's going on anymore. So making sure that your sales teams are, yes, forming a direction, but not driving the entire product and what features and functionality should be in that is really quite key. So what's the solution to that is kind of have some faith in your own product and your own skills and your market research. If we try and provide a one-size-fits-all shoe that has everyone in the market's functionality in one product, then it just doesn't work anymore. You think back to what's your USP, focus on a small number of things and do them very well. Just like kind of the iPhone, when the iPhone first launched, what was the one thing it did well? It did great user experience and it had a great form factor. and everyone was like, oh yeah, I want one of those. If you compare it to Windows 6.5 at the time on your PDAs, it was very different. And that's still the thing that they control. They still control that user experience. So kind of think about not including everything. Be selective and choose your kind of areas where you want to win.
So the next sin, gluttony. This is a good word. I like this word. This is all about focusing way too much on huge amounts of features and functions in a platform, in a product. This is definitely not something we want to do, because if you do this, it might be okay when you first bring something out and you're getting the initial features and functions in. If you just keep adding and adding and adding, you might end up with something like this. Lotus Notes. I don't know who's got experience with this. But if anyone has used it, you will see that it has got the feature and the function to do everything you could possibly want to do. I mean, you could probably run Twitter's back end on this thing, but you would never ever know how to actually do it. Like, if anyone's tried to use it, it's just, there are so many things you can do, but all you do, send an email, receive an email, put something in your calendar, maybe send someone a message on the same time that's integrated. I don't know, really, I've never used it for anything else, so I've moved on to IBM Verse now anyway, which is the updated version on the cloud. So we don't want to end up with things like this. And the solution for that is all about design thinking, really, and again, centering it around the user rather than the features and functions. So I've got an example here. Someone says, design me a bridge. You're going to say, okay, it will have all these amazing features and functions. It's going to be really elaborate. It's a beautiful bridge. If you ask the question why, then you might actually just find out from the user, ask the user why they want that. And they'll say, well, I want to get a message over to the other side. And you say, oh, okay then. Well, maybe a bridge is not actually the answer. Maybe you can think slightly outside the box, plane or a boat. And you say, well, why do you actually want to get to the other side? Oh, I just want to speak to my friend who's on the other side. Okay, well, we don't need any of those things then. We just need a phone connection or the internet. So just keep asking why at the different stages, and you can finally get to the root of that problem about why that person needs that thing. So in the Internet of Things, everyone just comes and says, oh, I want the Internet of Things. Well, why do you want that? And yeah, this comes down to design thinking. So in design thinking, we're understanding the problem and the user. We're exploring loads of possible different solutions. We're prototyping to check that that's working. And then we evaluate it with those users at every possible step of the way.
Excellent. So next sin, wrath, or we called assuming your users know what IoT is. We cannot stress this enough. We, the people in this room, and probably similar conferences like it, are the ones that are making the decisions and deciding the terminology as to how IoT is defined and everything like that. But I will bet if we asked everyone in the room what they thought IoT is, they will come back with something, probably along the same lines, but worded slightly differently, perhaps have a different outcome. If you went ahead and asked, I don't know, your family, or I asked my gran what she thinks I do, and she said, oh, you connect fridges, right? And I said, well, yeah, part of it, but not really telling the entire story. So everyone has completely different answers to what IoT is. So don't assume that when you're pitching to someone or you're talking about use cases with someone, they really understand the value of where IoT can kind of fit in their business. There's not one use case right now that we find when we go out and speak to people that really appeals to everyone. So you may say, okay, well, perhaps some people can understand a medical application of IoT. Perhaps some people can understand like an automotive application, so connecting my car and so I can see, yeah, the value from that's going to be great. Or connecting my gran up to the internet, I can see if she's going walkies. But in reality, there's not that single application as of yet that everyone can relate to. So how can we solve that? Well, we need to deliver a clear and consistent information experience, and that is as much about creating standards and trying to kind of apply them in your products, and also having discussions just like where we are now and speaking to people and saying, okay, well, I'm using the word device as to mean an object like a Raspberry Pi, another person's using asset, another person's using thing, and these all mean the same. They all have the same connotation, but it's all about having that kind of sync across the entire industry. And that's going to take time. That's not something that's going to get fixed immediately.
So the next sin, lust. IoT is something that everyone loves at the moment. I read an article a few days ago, and Mark Shuttleworth mentioned it earlier. Every big enterprise company wants to ride the wave of IoT. It's just the cool, trendy thing to do at the moment. So the sin here, it really is, if the maths will work, really is building the Internet of Things, but why? What's the actual reason behind it? What do you want to achieve? I know that everyone in this room probably has a really good idea, but again, there are some people that come to IBM and say, I want the Internet of Things. Why? Just because. And that's really not the way you want to do it. And you might end up with stupid things like internet-connected toilets. I can see maybe there being a slight use for that if you've left the house and forgot to flush a toilet and you don't want your boyfriend to get mad at you, or your wife or your girlfriend to get mad at you, flush the toilet on your way out. But really, that's a bit of a strange use case, and I don't really see it. So there's some strange things there. And an even... yeah. Good one, Andy. Good one.
Good app somebody can make for a toilet.
Yeah, when someone comes up with the app, then yeah. But at the moment, just connecting up your toilet.
They'll all be crappy apps.
Keep them coming, keep them coming. Or there's also another thing that I read this article about a year ago about you can buy a tweeting hamster cage. I'm not sure, again, it's just one of those comical things that doesn't really have a use unless maybe it can tell you your hamster's dead or something, I don't know. But it's a strange thing to want to do. And there's a lot of these things that people are just playing around with IoT, coming up with things. But I think we're still yet to find that one really, really amazing idea that really just boosts IoT up into the amazingness wonder of what IoT really could be. So, lust.
Pride.
So pride is the next one. And pride really is all about not wanting to make your users feel like idiots, but also at the same time, don't be condescending towards them. So don't complicate things, and also don't oversimplify things. And we've got a few examples of here. In terms of product, you can really overcomplicate some things. That washing machine, for example, has got way too many buttons. I don't know how many of you actually use any more than about 2 settings on your washing machine. So why the hell does it need all of these things? So it's just, don't overcomplicate it, but at the same time, don't oversimplify it either. You do need those few different use cases, and it's digital as well. This you might put in front as an IoT platform. It's listing out all the device data you could ever possibly want. But again, it's just so complicated. But again, moving on to something that could actually be too simple. This could actually have a really good use case if you're out in the field and you're just wanting to know if everything's okay, or wanting to know if there's a problem, then this might be okay. But again, this really is, the solution for this is thinking about the users. What do they really want? What are the use cases? And something that we use in our platform, we tried to use, is something called progressive disclosure. So putting things on at the surface level, making people see that they can scratch things on the surface, and let them dig down deeper if they want to, provide really in-depth APIs, documentation, more information. And this comes, again, down to using all the correct terminology. It's something Claire mentioned. You have to make sure that terminology is consistent throughout every level, UI, API, actual product as well. So just keeping that consistent is something that's really important.
So yeah, our final sin is sloth, or assuming that your users have, I've put infinite patience there, but any patience, or care about you or your product. The way that everyone's able to quickly try stuff out now has meant that you have maybe 10 minutes of their time, maybe a little bit more if they're feeling generous, to convince someone why they should spend money on your product, especially in the age of the web and signing up for however many platforms. You go ahead, you sign up, you say, I don't like this, I give up, I move on to the next one. How long does that take you? 5-10 minutes? The same, it's even less with applications on your mobile phone. You launch it for the first time, you like it, you don't like it, you delete it, you keep it. So exactly the same principle for this stuff. And this comes back to don't design for yourself or your development team. Make sure you understand what your users are looking for and why. Present their information depending on what they're interested in. So if they're a C-suite exec, they're probably more interested in how that's going to change their business, versus if they're someone that's integrating systems, then they might care a little bit more about how your APIs work, things like that. But but having said that, so kind of one of the things that we're quite lucky to have at the moment is because IoT is a new thing, people are willing to spend a little bit more time trying your stuff out. But that's going to change. I mean, yeah, right now we have the kind of the happy medium of people spending 10 minutes on your product, or even half an hour evaluating why they might want to invest a lot of money in it. But that's not going to be the case in 5 years' time when everyone has an IoT offering. So make use of it while it's there, to be honest. So yeah, we'll end the presentation